fine. Too long, man. Then you go too much. You even go see something good, you still in the car. It's, so we got kids and everything like that. But they probably don't think that they actually did okay. Everyone was car sick, but other than that, it was like, they actually did okay. We were happy with it, like seeing everything. We saw some cool. The ball didn't even stop before you got back in the car. I wouldn't buy some into Infinity and beyond. And then we saw a whole fake 40. That's what I started getting. So baking. But it was interesting. Great. I like that. Once in a lifetime thing. All right, now I'm watching the Discovery Channel. There you go. Check that box. I'm not doing that again. I'll have to get this in. Beach by 5:30. Sit there for the sundown. Perfect. I don't want to be that. Well, an air host who's out there. We're sitting there one night, and we got the jugs. On a doll. I'm in that picture. They can drink. That's Kool-Aid, right?
I will call this regular council meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Deputy Chief, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'd remain standing for a moment, please. Heavenly Father, instill in us tonight the strength to do thy will and make great decisions for our city. Last week, I was fortunate enough to take part in the opening of a new church here in town. For many years, the Parabolic Church of Christ held services wherever they could. They baked cakes, cookies, and pastries to sell and saved every dime to build their brand new church that they have today. Their faith and perseverance brought them to what they have today, and I believe our faith and perseverance will get us through the issues we are experiencing right now in the city of Pataskala. Lord, bless all that are here tonight, and we ask for all of this in your holy name. Amen. Hey, Kathy, roll, please.
Carter. Here. Walther.
Here.
Epperson.
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Hampshire. Here. Gaelic.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum present, and our directors are here. I think Jamie's joining us from sunny St. Martin's. Is that St. Martin's you're at? Okay, very good.
Yeah, I wish. It's cloudy Columbus.
Cloudy Columbus, very good. All right. First thing on the agenda tonight is citizens' comments, and we do have a, is there anybody on the list just to talk?
I don't believe so, I'll confirm.
Okay. And if not, we'll go into, we have a couple of folks tonight that I know Jude's son's going to talk to us a little bit about Explore Licking County, and Dr. Ann Walther is going to give us an update on Volunteer Park. So we'll see if there's anybody out there that wants to just speak first, and then we'll jump into those two.
Dr. Walter's the only one out there.
Okay, very good.
Scott was right behind me, so he,
Okay, we'll start with Dr. Walther then, if you bring her in. Thank you. Scott? Welcome back, Lanier.
Thank you. Glad to be back.
Could you turn that shirt down just a little bit?
terrible line.
Dr. Ann Walther. I'm the volunteer administrator for the Patasko Recreation Association, and I'm here to submit to council the volunteer park project that was located at the Leeds Center. This project has been ongoing since 2016, and we are grateful to the Leeds Board of Directors and their CEO Ken Kempton for allowing us to participate in the revitalization and the rehabilitation of this project. For those of you that don't know, the Leeds Center is located at 12536 Adams Lane. It's approximately 2 miles from Citizens Park if you go by Cleveland Road. I'm going to present a photo slideshow of the improvements, and I did have a list that I would provide to council later about this project specifically that we did at this park. But I would like to take the opportunity to thank our donors and volunteers, Eagle Scout Tyler Giles, Jersey Baptist Youth and Service Group, the Licking County Foundation, Energy Co-op, the Rocky Fork Landscaping, Clearcut, Penland Seating, Safco and Sons, Land Camp Landscaping, WRK Development, and the Patasko Lions Club. And additionally, I'd like to thank those community members, both here and abroad and everywhere else in the country, that support us through Kroger Cares and Amazon Smile. So that it has been a great labor of love over the past 4 years. And just so you're aware, the total for this park revitalization and rehabilitation was $61,000. So again, this is what Leeds Park looked like. There's the Leeds Center, which is a community action service organization. And you can see the buildings here. This is what the baseball, there's 2 fields, 2 diamonds there. One is a large field, and one is what we call T-ball diamond. This was the backstop and dugouts of the large field. This is a shot from the road with the giant tree, and that's what we called it, the giant tree. And so that is kind of the landmark. This is a small picture of the basketball hoop and asphalt basketball area. Again, the large tree, and then we can see in the crosswalk. What you can see in this picture here, this was taken a little more forward, is the fencing that we did install. We did put a perimeter fence in when we first began the project. And we donated back to the city 17 posts and 22 rails in order to permit any type of repairs and maintenance. And from what I understand, those repairs were made Friday. So this was the soccer field, or the local pond. Again, this is what, there was a remaining, the park itself had been left abandoned for many years prior to us taking over. Again, big tree. So what we started with was a lot of dirt and gravel. And this is where the soccer field was proposed to go. You can see in the foreground there's the parking lot being put together. I'm going fast. If you'd like to see these, you're more than welcome. Again, lots and lots of dirt, sand, gravel that we hauled in. Couldn't have done a lot of this without all of our contractors that went in there. Again, the soccer field. This is the first drawing of the soccer field, but if you take a really close look to the soccer field, we did suffer from some vandalism during this project. Apparently when you make a nice field, they will come on 4-runners and 4x4s, and even cows showed up on the fields. So unfortunately, we did suffer some damage on the soccer field, and because we are particular about our soccer fields, we went ahead and stripped it. I'm sorry, it's upside down. Stripped it down again. So there's someone we know walking to make sure the drainage is put together correctly, and that was the other thing that we really struggled with this particular field, and also with the large baseball diamond, was making sure that we would not inadvertently leave another lake. So there is a dome in the middle of the soccer field, and if you drive in, you can see it very, very evidently. You also notice that the grass is a little bit different, because you don't build a field that plays soccer, you build a soccer field. So it's meant for kids and adults to play soccer without any type of issue. So there we go. This is the asphalt group. We thank the city of Patasko. This was kind of a first joint effort between Mr. Crawford and myself, putting new asphalt on the basketball court. And at that time, we were pushing more financial resources into the greater park project, so the city was able to help us purchase the very nice basketball hoops that are out there. Oh, that was sideways too. I'm sorry, guys. This is the Jersey Baptist group. And when I talk about volunteers, we take anybody. And I don't mean that lightly. Everybody has a project to do, and this was the first little youth group that helped us, and they painted all the yellow that is out there on the shelter for safety. So we can always find something to do for our volunteers. This is the first go at the baseball field, the large, with Eagle Scout Giles. If you notice in the foreground on the left, he replaced the backstop coverage for those tall balls. And then he also replaced many of the panels on the fencing, and also the overtop, the yellow overtop. So here we are, we're going to get through. That's the T-ball. Again, he also placed the yellow on the T-ball, and he reset the benches, and then again, a lot of the fencing was repaired so that it was accurate. He also put in a concrete path, which was very nice, and now with the new parking lot in, the people can go up and go right across the basketball court, and there is a ramp that goes right into the shelter house now. So this is the post removal of the 3 ugly trees, not to be confused with the beautiful tree that's there. And then, I'm so sorry for this, they did not turn sideways when I did this. Licking County Foundation to provide us with a grant of $7,000 for the parking lot. And it went in last Tuesday and Wednesday. And then here's the final photos. Those are the 3 other trees right there. And they were removed. Again. You can see the fencing in there. And there's your soccer field. The soccer goals are ready to be installed. We have them out there at the big field. And Mr. Crawford and his team will put them in as soon as he feels he has a valuable user. And you can see that the big field is ready to play. There's another person that we put the shot in there. That's what we spent our date night on the fields. And then there's your T-ball field. So there are a few more things in there. We also built a shelter house out there so that the crew can leave equipment out there. It's pretty large. It is key locked. And that's where we'll also be providing the nets for the goals and also the corner flags for the soccer field, and then anything else we can come up with out of my garage. And there's the gentleman putting the gravel in, and it just looks awesome. It really does. And then we did install the fence. This was part of Eagle Scout Giles project, and everything else. So, volunteer park. In addition, due to some of the restrictions and back orders, we were not able to purchase the baseball bases for both the fields. So we'd like to present Mr. Crawford with a check for $350 so he can do so when he finds the appropriate bases that he wants to put in there for the appropriate users. So does anyone have any questions?
Well, I just have a quick comment before there's questions or other comments, because I want to obviously commend you on, I don't know how many folks were here when, I'm looking around here. You know, the history of that was that there was a baseball game being played there a long time ago, and that entity was supposed to have insurance, and that entity didn't have insurance, and somebody got hurt and either sued or tried to or did something, and the Leeds folks said, okay, that's it. And just walked away from it. And it sat and it sat and it sat. It was getting worse and worse and worse, and we went to some meetings. I got Sarah Wallace involved and brought her out here, and had some meetings and assured her that we would not only do what you folks have done to it, but also make sure that nothing like that ever happened again, and that's why we have another park today. So that's a little bit of history, and my thanks. Anybody else want to chime in? Tommy, you look like you wanted to say something.
No.
Okay. Anybody else want to chime in there?
Oh, I will.
Go ahead, Tim.
I'll say a huge thank you.
Mhm.
Obviously, that was a lot of work, and anything that adds a significant part to our stuff, it's absolutely fabulous. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Lanier?
This park is a great addition to our system. I've seen it evolve over the last 2 years, going on 3 since I've been here, and a lot of work has been done on it, and it's been great working with the PRA and Andy with this project, and I'm finally glad that we're able to start and get it to be used by some of our local leagues, and also just in general, the kids in that area have been utilizing the basketball court quite often since September, so I know it is being used, and now that we have a little bit more to offer, it's going to be great. Thank you.
And you know, and I know Mrs. Carter will probably say it's nice to have more stuff on the west side. Go ahead, Mrs. Carter.
It's nice to have more stuff on the west side, Mayor. But also, I'll say, many moons ago, when my sons were still tiny and tried to play baseball. I sat at that park in, literally puddles. I mean, if it rained, we would be flooded out of there. It was miserable. Many Saturdays spent in mud. And it's just the extreme improvement. It's beautiful. I mean, it's a completely different place, so you guys really, as usual, knocked it out of the park, so. no problem.
Knocked it out of the park, awesome. So what's the next step, Tim and PRA? I mean, do we accept it as a city, or how's that
I don't know
happen?
that there's a formal acceptance that I've seen. I know that, in my discussions with Lanier, we're anxious to start scheduling, and I don't know if there is any, is there a formal acceptance?
So you guys, so the park is leased essentially by the city from the nonprofit. So that was done 4 years ago when we started this whole issue. So you got, I mean, it's the city's park. The amenities that were completed by PRA are essentially being officially turned over for acceptance. And I think my recollection is that there is a process to accept that. I don't know that that's necessarily this evening, but there's a process of some type, I think, that that we do anyhow. But the reason why we wanted to do it now was so that the fall ball kids could start scheduling for use, because it'll be, I think, pretty nice for that. It's a pretty darn nice facility on top of being a nice facility in that area. So,
So in essence, I guess what I'm trying to say is, well, you guys are done,
mhm.
and we're thanking you, and we're going to start mowing
Oh, I'm
Ma-
sorry.
and maintaining.
Yeah, we've already been doing that, but yes,
Okay,
the upgrades are definitely a contribution to the park.
Right. So that's really what I think this purpose was, just to make sure everybody knew it was done. And tell Lanier that, go ahead and schedule away.
thank you. Thank you,
If
thank you.
there is a formal acceptance, I'll see what I can do to put that on the legislative.
One thing I would like to say is there was a current schedule at one time of formal dedication. So sometime in the future, if there presents an opportunity when we're all together, it would be nice to have some sort of formal dedication.
And I think Jude also had we had some ideas about the Lions clubs doing some tree planting out there along the front. It would be a really great place for it to happen.
We were quite a ways through the process when Corona hit. Also, Dr. Walther, isn't the original shelter that's out there, that was an Eagle project as well, wasn't it?
Yes.
I wanna say maybe Tyler Finnegan or
It
Jared
was,
Ryan.
I have the name at home, and it was an Eagle project, and then both of the dugouts were also, I don't know if it was the same Eagle Scout or a different,
I think
but
it
it
was
was prior
two
to,
separate.
it might have been sometime between Mrs. Carter's time out there and then our adoption, so yes. There are quite a few Eagle Scouts that laid their hands on that park over the years.
It'd be nice if there was some sort of formal ceremony, if they could come to, I'm sure they'd be willing to do that.
Very good. Takes a community. Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Was there any other input or questions for Mrs. Walther while she's here?
Just
Okay.
thank you.
We'll just do this
Dr.
by
Walker.
Thank you.
All right, Scott. Is he here?
Will you report?
Is your son here? You're not keeping tabs on your kids tonight? Okay.
Any night, really.
I think he's here.
The bigger they get, the harder it is. I can't buckle in the seats anymore.
You chipped their phone.
Hey, look who it is. I'll
I have
need,
an update for you.
need your name and address, please, for the record.
Tyler, Hampshire. 13318 Havens Corners Road. I have an update for you on Explore Licking County. The meetings are being held monthly, and special events as needed are held on Zoom. Any votes are taken by email and recorded. There were initially 4 full-time employees, but 3 have been furloughed indefinitely, and the executive director is still on staff part-time to maintain the flow of business. The office in downtown Newark is closed to the public, but is still operating with the one part-time employee. All rents and utilities are still due regardless of income. Advertising is being handled on a case-by-case basis, depending on whether it was prepaid or whether it was paid for the ad monthly. Sponsorships are also being monitored and adjusted as needed. The annual awards event, scheduled for December 1st at Midland, has been canceled for 2020, and hopefully tourism will pick up and one can be rescheduled for the end of 2021. As this business operates fully on bed tax revenue, there is none at this point. Tourism and hotel stays are at a minimum, so no bed taxes are being collected by hotels, so none is being paid forward to Explore Lincoln County. Explore Lincoln County appreciates all the care and concern everyone is currently putting into offering the many safe and beautiful outdoor amenities available in Lincoln County. Please continue to market these to everyone. Any ideas anyone has for the betterment of survival of the organization are always welcome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you, sir. What was Pataskill's ad this year? Was it?
I was looking it up myself.
You know, last year we got a free additional page. And this year, I don't know if we got one.
Okay, I'll look at it later.
As soon as all this came out, everything kind of came to a
Right.
screeching halt immediately, so.
Okay, thank you.
Surprised I got it printed.
Yes, yeah, luckily it was, printed and ready to go in what, December or January?
You know, I think it was December, I think they passed some of
This
these
was
out
ready
at,
at the awards presentation in
awards,
December, so
but
luckily they printed ahead, so. All right, very good. Introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda passes. On to reports. I just have one thing tonight. I know that Chief Brooks can chime in, and so can Deputy Chief. I asked him to come tonight, and Tim can too, but we had run into, and Deputy Chief, would you sit closer to the mic, please, for me? Because I'm gonna probably turn this over to you, because I know that you'd initially reached out to Mr. Nicholson to look at some numbers, because we're having difficulty trying to find, yes, sir.
So I want point of order for folks. We've had some complaints from our Facebook watchers that they can't hear us. So you can take your mask off, I think, and try to speak up a little bit. We think that maybe the mic volume is low, but just want to make sure folks on Facebook can hear too. Thanks. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but
Well, and that's fine, because I didn't, I think podium was part of the problem too, wasn't it?
I'm not sure, so.
Because we're only focusing the we're not going anywhere else with the camera, are we? We're just going one shot. Okay. Because I'm sure we lost a few folks, they didn't get to see the slides, or, correlate that with what Dr. Walter was talking about, so good point. Take the mask down when you're talking. We've had some difficulties trying to fill the 2 part-time positions. People want to work full-time. This is in the police department. And Deputy Chief reached out to Jamie to look at some numbers. Can you just take it from there, Deputy Chief, and tell us what you've, and then we'll have Jamie chime in too.
Yes, in discussions with Chief Brooks and Tim Hicken, I kind of floated out there the possibility of, we have 2 part-time positions at 30 hours a week that are budgeted for every year, and we haven't been able to fill those positions. So I discussed the opportunity to potentially get rid of those positions and turn it into 1 full-time position. Because I think it'd be a lot easier to fill, and obviously our manpower issues could use the assistance there as well. I asked Jamie to do some numbers on that. I basically had him do it for this year to see what the cost difference would be funding wise for the 2 part-time positions versus 1 full-time. And for the remainder of this year, it would actually be Actually, a little bit, almost a little under $1,500 less to have the full-time position than the 2 part-times. So that's kind of where we're at with that, and wanted to get it out there and see what council thought.
Yeah, we just wanted to start the discussion, because we've been having discussions about, you know, economic directors and other things, and obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, but again, then, you know, we've been struggling with, we know we all need numbers on the police department, so I wanted to bring it up for discussion. There's no ordinances, no resolutions, nothing in front of you tonight, it's just for discussion as we go through this and try to increase some numbers. We don't know what the, you know, even, we are going forward with the income tax discussion and working on that for next May, but we can't keep counting on that, we have to keep moving forward, so. Jamie, did you have any input at all?
No, just other than, you know, when I ran the numbers, what?
Go ahead, keep going.
Okay. When I ran the numbers, I ran it for the first 12 months. And for all intents and purposes, like Deputy Chief Bull said, it's a push. You know, I think it was $1,500 difference. So for the first 12 months, you know, you're getting more hours out of the part-time at a lower rate. You know, I think there's something to be said for having a full-time permanent officer as opposed to 2 part-times. But you know, again, that's the chief and deputy chief's call. But from a financial perspective, you know, it really is, in a short-term basis, it's the same, whether you go 2 part-times or 1 full-time.
Okay. Chief, you got any input?
Nope, that was
Okay.
pretty,
Tim?
that was it in a nutshell.
I would say we saw a similar thing when from my time spent on the fire board. I mean, it's much easier to hold 1 full time than 2 part-times. At the risk of sounding, I don't mean to sound flippant, but I don't know a lot of people that would want to be a part-time officer. They usually, I think, and I don't know, you can jump in if you think that's wrong, but in my discussions, the same was true in the fire service when I was working for this city, representing a city on Southwest Lincoln. So I'm in line with that, and wanted council to know, don't be surprised if coming forward here, you indeed do see something like an opportunity to bring that full-time position on. I will also add that we just also lost another officer position to whatever form of attrition you want to call it, but we lost another one, so we're already down. So it makes
So
sense.
again, yes, ma'am.
That sucks, we lost another one. Another officer?
Yeah, I sent that out a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
That's the one
I thought there
that
was
is-
another
I'm
one.
sorry,
No,
that is
no,
the one,
no.
that's the one I'm speaking of.
Okay.
That position has not been filled yet,
Right.
Okay.
so.
Well, and what I was going to ask is, I mean, obviously, I think being able to get a full-time officer in would be great anyhow. So if we're without, and we could then get somebody full-time, that would help immensely. Do we have any current part-time officers?
Just one, Josh Silverman, and he doesn't even work a regular schedule, just because of his other job, he can't,
Okay.
so.
So he wouldn't be interested in,
Not this time, no, I don't
Okay.
think that he would be.
because obviously, I mean, it'd be great if we could, you know, somebody who's already trained and
Yep.
in position, but.
Mr. Barstow?
No, well, I mean, the proof's in the pudding. I mean, we've got the 2 part-time positions, and one's not filled, and the other one is filled, right? I mean, it's,
No, actually, we have 3. 2 are not filled.
oh, okay.
So then, and the one doesn't even come close to the 30 hours a month
Okay.
that it's budgeted for.
So we have 3, one's not, 2 are not filled, and 1 is filled, but really in name only, understandably. Not being critical of the guys, understandably, okay. Well, it seems to make sense then, if we're not filling the part-time positions, to then create, or the part-time positions, to do it, mold those into full-time positions, and then we'll get one person who's here 40 hours a week consistently, and it's, even if it was a little bit more money to do a full-time, it would still be worth it to me to have the extra manpower out on the street, I think, so, yeah. We appreciate you, thinking along those lines and trying to solve that problem, absolutely.
Mr. Walter?
Yeah, just a quick question on the two part-time positions. Do they do something other than what a full-time position does? I'm not very familiar with maybe their scope or what they would be. We obviously have part-time positions for a reason. Would they do exactly the same thing as, say, a full-time position would? The reason why I'm asking this is if we brought in a full-time person, you know, obviously someone now monitoring the streets and so forth, does that alleviate something that a part-time person would have done? Or is there still yet something else a part-time person did for you guys or did for the police force?
Generally, the job is exactly the same. The problem that we actually run into with part-time is in doing the job just as a full-time would. You know, if you're part-time, you generally are employed elsewhere as well. So it was becoming increasingly difficult for court appearances. You know, you get a subpoena and that conflicts with your other job, so that makes things difficult there too. So just all around, I mean, there was a time for the part-time positions. They helped us fill, you know, some gaps where we needed coverage, but just the inability to keep them filled versus hiring somebody full-time, I think it's definitely a greater benefit.
Okay. Yeah, that's basically what I was asking, why we had part-time positions if that was not ideal at this point. So, all right, thanks.
Back when we started part-time positions, we actually had people that, you know, were retired and things like that that filled in, that didn't want to work full-time, but they slid right into those spots and covered, you know, some spots in our schedules. So it worked out. But now, unfortunately, you know, those people have all moved on. And you know, another thing we found out is that anybody that accepts a part-time job, they're looking for a full-time job. So while they take that part-time job, we, you know, clothe them, train them, equip them, and then, you know, they're still looking for another job. So
Just like the fire department.
They're gone anyway.
You're looking for full-time.
Okay. Yep, that answers the question. Thank you.
Any other? And again, yes, ma'am.
Are there any restrictions? Are they maybe a full-time officer somewhere else? Does that put any restrictions on how many hours they can work somewhere else? Like if they work, say 40 hours somewhere else, can they still work 30 for us, or is that too many hours?
I think that's more of a, you know, I know it's up to the chief as to whether or not he allows dual commissions with other agencies. So, and I think, you know, the amount of hours that would be worked would play into that as to whether or not he allowed that. But typically, if somebody's full-time somewhere, they aren't coming here to be a part-time officer. If they're a full-time officer, they're pretty satisfied with where they're at.
We've never had that situation.
To answer Ms. Hampshire's question, a lot of times part-time officers will have a full-time law enforcement related job somewhere else. They may work as a security guard. They may work in like industrial security. They don't have a peace officer commission, but they're working something related. They may have a pot of training, but they're not using that in their other job. So that's typical. And then as soon as they find a job, you know, full-time with somebody as a police officer, then, as the chief said, then they go. You don't blame them.
Right.
Full-time work, so.
Good. And again, yes, sir.
I don't know if this is still the case, but we ran into this a little bit in the fire department. When an officer has a full-time job at another union department, a lot of times they frown upon working part-time somewhere else. Is that a struggle that you guys see too, is getting guys that work full-time somewhere else, that they don't want to work part-time and take essentially a full-time job? I know that we see that. I assumed you guys did too.
We actually don't, because again, we've never really faced that situation where a full-time officer somewhere else was willing to work part-time. Yeah. I mean, all of our part-timers were either retired or they, you know, they worked a completely different, you know, job, and
we're aspiring to be full-time, and then
exactly. So
once they reach that goal, and they were gone from the part-time position.
I just didn't know if that made it more difficult to hire part-time because of that.
yeah, it probably has. Hence, we've never had to deal with that.
Very good. Well, I thought this was the place to have the discussion and look forward from something from Tim, and we'll craft that along with whatever Mr. Zetz wants to throw in there, and we'll discuss it again. Thank you. That's actually all I had tonight. Mr. Barstow, what do you have, sir?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. Still need to get the evaluations in from folks. Like to get those in before Labor Day, please. I know Tim will touch on this a little bit, but I had a chance to talk to the Charter Commission on Thursday night. I think that's an outstanding group of citizens. I was really impressed with those folks. An old name, Barb Triplett is the chair of that commission, so I'm sure she'll have things well in hand, and we look forward to what they're going to do. And that's all I have. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome, sir. Mr. Zatz.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
On the Charter Commission, Todd?
Yeah.
What, are you expecting us to, or is there gonna be some time when we're asked to give some ideas regarding?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. So I brought to them concerns that council has faced with the charter. An example being the debate over what are the qualifications for an appointee when there's a vacancy, and they'll look at that section.
Right.
And I had some other suggestions, some things that I have dealt with over the years on council. My suggestion to members of council, if you want to talk to your appointee or anybody on the commission about ideas for the commission to look at, please go have.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, what was the process that you would like
You can
for us
just
to go
talk to
through?
your appointee or anybody who's on the commission and say, hey, could you just look at this? And again, my direction to them, other than the timelines that we have for getting it on the ballot, if there's going to be recommendations for changes, was if this is your document to look at. These are just issues. If you look at this section, the appointment of vacancies, and say, there's nothing to see here, and move on, and don't make any recommendations, that's fine. That's your job. So I didn't, obviously we're not trying to tell them what to do.
Right.
So sure, but no, Andy, thanks a lot. So to members of council, if you have suggestions, if there's something, feel free to talk to your appointee or again anybody on the commission. Well, your appointee would probably make the most sense to let them know, hey, this is an issue. So, and that includes the mayor. I know Tim's going to be talking to his directors if they have issues for their parts. Mr. Zetz, obviously, and Mr. Zetz may get some questions about some issues of things we can change, or can't change. So, thanks.
Well, we've all jotted things down over the years, and I'm sure, Kathy, have you picked up on anything that may or may not as
Most things were addressed in our last charter change.
Okay.
I did make one suggestion to Mrs. Triplett that they take a look at, and that's our oath of office, and that we formally add the word great city of Pataskala.
Very good. Very good. All right.
I'm sure the voters would approve that if that was on the ballot.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've had, some folks reach out to me, the BZA alternates. We've gotten stuff over the years I've tried to jot down so that can be included in the next one. So very good. I will do that.
So again, Mr. Hicken, if you could just put a word out to our boards and commissions, would that be okay for you to do that?
Certainly.
Just like the chairs, and say, hey, if there's an idea, there's some part of the charter that befouls your efforts to move forward all the time, or you don't understand, let them take a look at it.
I'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
And Mr. Zetz, you had nothing, sir?
Oh, I would just remind council that while you may talk to your own representative, I would avoid talking to a quorum of that charter commission, because then you could run afoul of the open meetings law.
No, we went. Mr. Hicken produced Fire and Brimstone. Mr. Zetz will be pleased.
Okay.
And we're talking about the Sunshine Law, okay? And it's kind of like Moses coming down off Mount Sinai, okay?
Pass the tablets on to Tim.
Oh, yeah.
And he could.
Okay, very good. So there will be no golden calf. Anyway, to continue with our biblical metaphor. So, no, a reminder of that. They're a public body. You can't get three of them together for lunch or for lunch. Or drinks or whatever, and have a chit chat. You can do it individually. That's why I recommend that you use your appointee as your contact point to the Charter Commission. So, okay. And thank you, Mr. Zetz.
Nothing else, Mayor. Thank you.
How do we know that was coming, right? All right, Mr. Hicken.
Well, I will follow up just a little bit. The chair is Barb Triplett, the vice chair is Ms. Doherty, and the secretary is Mr. Friel. It was a good conversation. I think everybody at the Charter Commission is excited, and in talking with Mrs. Triplett's representative, or I'm sorry, her nominee, or nominator, Ms. Carter, we're looking to move forward relatively quickly, moving fast and getting her done. So there are two ordinances on tonight I wanted to remind council about. One ordinance, 4341, we anticipate remaining tabled, and then resolution 2020-047, we also anticipate remaining tabled if council remembers. That is the resolution that they tabled until they could get some further information about what the bids might be for the path in Foundation Park. We did interview candidates for the clerk of mayor's court and selected one. Her start date will be August 17th. My thanks to Kip Kelsey, who helped me devise the questions and sat in on the interviews. We narrowed it to 3 finalists. They were very good, all 3 of them. All of them had experience. One was a bailiff and could sometimes maybe do bailiff duty if Jess slid into the role of clerk when we had a bailiff absent. The other 2 already had clerking experience in courts, and it was the selection was not easy, but we feel we've settled on a good one, and she will start August 17th. I want to really quick follow up with council. I had a meeting with the union representatives and the police chief and I and Jamie last week because the governor's order regarding quarantine for people returning from states that had been put on the hot list, for lack of a better term. The crux of the meeting was if we're forcing these people into a 14-day quarantine, when they could easily come back in, immediately contract something, or their roommate or whatever, office mate could contract something, and they would then be forced to utilize leave for the next 80 hours, having already used their COVID time, or what we call COVID time. I'm putting the cart a little bit before the horse because one of the things I was waiting on was notification from Chad Brown and a discussion with him about what to do. After meeting with Chad, what we had settled on was actually allowing, unless there are some egregious circumstances, people to return masked and distanced with temperature checks at beginning of shift, lunch, and end of shift. And if no symptoms occur or problems arise in temperature, if that does happen, they would immediately be sent home, and the health department would be notified, and it would kick them into a quarantine situation. So it hasn't become as high profile a concern, but I move forward in coming up with a logical plan to address instances such as that, or any other where somebody is, whether in the union or not, is deemed to be either infected or needs to go through testing protocol. With that, I will answer I'll answer any questions.
Anything for Tim? Thank you, sir. Mr. Nicholson.
Mayor, hey, just to tag on to what Tim was saying, we were really pleased the response we received from representatives of the steelworker, the FOP and OPBA. We weren't per se, but what we were doing was just kind of bringing them in the loop so they knew what was coming or could be coming down the pike, and they were very supportive, so I was pleased with that. I have 2 things on the agenda for tonight. The first is a supplemental. That supplemental is related to the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. We are receiving about just a little over $60,000, and in fact, we received that money on Friday, so it's already in the bank, but we need appropriation authority to spend it. So far, we've identified about $33,000 of spending that meets the criteria set forth by the federal government and the state of Ohio of what we can spend the money on. So we can reimburse the police fund, the street fund, the general fund, etc. and we've identified a total of $33,000 so far, I think. Future spending we'll try to do out of this new local coronavirus relief fund that I'm required to create pursuant to these grant proceeds. In order to get things moving quickly, though, we're asking to waive readings tonight so that we can get this going forward. The dilemma we face is no later than December 13th, anything I haven't spent, I have to return to the state, which will go back to the feds. And I really don't want to give any money back. I want to spend it all on appropriate expenditures here in Pataskala. So we're asking for that. There's a motion on the agenda. For those of you who may or may not be familiar with the Fire Escrow Fund, brief background, council adopted an ordinance which I think state law started to allow. If you have a property that is significantly damaged by fire, before the insurance proceeds are dispersed to the homeowner, there's a calculation and a certain amount of that money is held back and given to the city. We put it into an escrow fund. So we don't earn any interest on it. It's not our money. And basically it gives us funds. If somebody were to take the insurance money and just skedaddle and leave us with a burned out shell around town, we would have money where we could demolish it, fill in the hole, what have you. So it protects the city in the event of a burnout. And what happens is once it gets to a certain level or stage of the rebuilding process, and right now it's the certificate of compliance issued by our zoning inspector, basically saying that they've met all the requirements. It's not an occupancy permit yet, but basically they're telling me it's done for all intent and purposes. At that point, then I'm able to release the funds back to them. But for whatever reason, when the legislation, the procedures were written, I have to come to council and get authorization to give them their money back. So that's what the motion is on tonight's agenda for 5144 Headley's Mill. And they have $60,000 that we're holding of their rebuilding proceeds. And they need that to, I'm sure, finalize their financing and their loan and everything. So those two piece items are on the agenda. As you know, revenues are still trending down. I revised as part of my 21 through 25 revenue forecast process. I revised all revenue sources. So it's income tax, it's permissive tax, gas tax, it is recreational fees. I mean, obviously the swimming pool is not going to bring in the kind of revenue that we had projected this time last year. So all of those were put into the box, and we closed the books today, and we're just starting to look at it. I'm going to meet with Tim tomorrow. We're going to talk through the process and what this looks like. Obviously, the revenues are down, which is never a good thing, but we want to come up with a plan that addresses it officially, so we'll be getting back with you on that. And that's all I have.
Anything for Jamie? Can we take that one more level? If somebody has a burnout and skips, and we have to pay for the demo and stuff, do we end up with the property also?
That'd be a Brian question, but the money is to use to basically remediate the property. If it's not so burned out that you could board up doors, board up windows, temporarily making it safe until such time as the process works through, as opposed to just leaving a corpse of a building with holes and everything in it.
Unsafe. Gotcha. Okay. Anything for Jamie? Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Jamie.
Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have very much. There's a resolution on the agenda tonight that covers the well cleaning project. I'm sure Mr. Walters will hit on that later on. We're down to just one service line leak to talk about this time, which has been a big improvement over what we've had. We had a hole in the copper service line, 14 knob port, so we replaced that with plastic. Everything's good to go with that. The big thing that I wanted to remind council about is that turnoffs for non-payment are about to begin. So the EPA authorized those July 10th, and as you remember, we decided to give another month to our customers to get their affairs in order. Due date is August 15th, which is on a Saturday, so it's actually August 17th for us. And if they have not paid their bills by August 17th or set up a payment plan with the department, we will go back to conducting turnoffs August 19th and 20th. The list is significant. It's pretty much the same repeat customers that this happens to, but the balances are larger. So we are going to go through, plan on turning off maybe 3 or 4 times as many as what normally is on our list because of the balances. That's usually how we decide how many we can squeeze in with our manpower, is look at the balances. So we've set aside 2 whole days for this. It's possible that it could be more. It just depends on what we see August 17th. But it's been a long time since we've done turnoffs. February was the last time we did them. So I just wanted to put the reminder out there to everybody, and that's coming up. But outside of that, I don't have anything. Be happy to answer any questions.
Chris, how many right now, let's say today that was the deadline, do you know offhand how many turn-offs?
I don't know exactly, but it's around 100. And normally we try and do 15, but the rest, so we almost always have around 100, but most of them are $15 balances, and so we focus on the big dollar balances. Obviously, without doing turn-offs since February, all the balances are big.
Okay. Has the department done a reach out or outreach to those customers, letting them know what their options are?
So we have continued to send them the late notice in the bills, even though we weren't doing anything. So they have gotten, not only have they gotten their bills since February, but they've gotten a second letter in the envelope saying that you're past due. And then we did reach out individually to the large landlords. And several of these properties are rentals. So throughout this whole process, we've reached out to landlords to let them know you should pay attention to these balances that are coming through, because ultimately they fall on the landlord, and we couldn't do any turnoffs. So we've tried to put the information out there as best we can, and for the most part, throughout the whole thing, we've had a good response on people keeping up on their bills.
What I guess, have the people who are in danger of cutoff, have they gotten information on how they can prevent turnoff?
So in the stuffer, it tells them the balance. They know they can pay the bill, but we have not called all 100 customers and said, just like every other month, if you pay your bill or establish a payment plan, we won't turn you off.
So in the cutoff notice, it doesn't say if you establish a payment plan, you can avoid cutoff.
No, it does not. I believe it was one of the Facebook posts that I put out covered that, but it's been a while. So there have not been one-on-one conversations with the people who have been behind their balances since February.
It would seem wise to me to include that as sort of standard language. That when you send out a past due, you would say if you want to, or maybe when the bill gets to be a certain amount or something that it would trigger a notice that would say you can avoid cutoff by either coming in and paying the whole bill or setting up a payment plan that's acceptable to us. Some people may be overwhelmed by a bunch of some things, and they may not even, they may just want to even think about trying to figure it all out. So I understand there may be some folks who, they don't care or whatever. I'd be like the fella who parks his truck over the shut-off valve. So
we see that call quite
yeah,
often.
that. So, but absent that, there may be some people who are really just truly overwhelmed by all of this. So maybe it might be wise to let them know.
Absolutely. I can say on the stuffer, normally we have a one-time you can get on the payment plan. We don't like to let people continue to get on the payment plan. Obviously, this situation is completely different from that. So the one-time thing doesn't apply here.
Well, yeah, I mean. Again, this is a suggestion. The department may want to consider, something that would allow folks who maybe have been on a payment plan before.
Oh, absolutely. For this
situation,
absolutely.
Or some sort of more of a liberalization of the payment plan terms, so that we don't have you know, mass turnoffs if that could be prevented.
Absolutely, that makes perfect sense.
Thank you.
Anything else for Chris? Yes, sir.
Chris, just another quick question on the items with the landlords. And I know in the past, we've had many discussions about landlords that felt they did not get notice that their tenants were running up these bills on being unpaid. Are the landlords still getting copies of the past due notices?
Yes, they do. If they opt to have the tenant handle the bill, they also get a duplicate copy. So every time the tenant gets one, the landlord gets one as well.
Okay. And I kind of see trouble coming down the path, I'm sure you see it too, in this situation where the landlord had no say in turning off the water, but yet is going to be ultimately responsible for it,
Right.
because you weren't allowed to turn them off.
Absolutely.
Have you started to at least think about that situation?
So I have been thinking about that. I don't have a great solution figured out yet. So our big goal for it to this point was communication with the landlords, just to let them know this is what we're allowed to do, this is what we're not allowed to do, and this is when we're bringing it back. But yes, I don't have a great answer for what could fall on their laps.
Go ahead, Mr. Barstow.
Well, a couple things. Could the landlord enter into a payment plan on behalf of some or all of her tenants?
Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, we try not to do a payment plan on a rental without the landlord's permission.
Okay. So because the landlord may be in a situation where he hasn't been getting much, if any, in the way of rent, because as you may or may not know, evictions,
Correct.
most courts had a stay on Eviction Act, residential commercial evictions, until just recently. The court stay, I think, ended on July 30th. So the court system's sort of back on from that aspect. So you may have a landlord who hasn't been getting, been getting half payments of rent, out of which he would have to pay a water bill if he's responsible for it. So this is some creative thinking here, so we don't have mass turnoffs.
The one thing I will say, and one of the things I'm proudest about our department, as Stephanie Tallman, the way she runs the building department, it's about the most friendly water department that you can find. And all someone has to do is call and explain to us what's going on, and we will work with anybody to get through this COVID situation. So we'll be as flexible as possible.
Go ahead, Mr. Gann.
I have a quick question, Chris. How much is reconnect fees if you do shut the water off for somebody?
So the $35 reconnection fee.
Okay, it's on the next water bill or just?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's just applied to the account. Yes.
You could pay him tonight if you wanted.
It's the house on Main Street that we're going to first.
Anything else for Chris? Well, as a steward for the building down there, the building's looking great, landscaping's looking great. Can you give me an update on the AC?
So I reached out to the contractor today, try and get a finish date, but I did not hear back from them before the meeting. But Columbus Heating and Ventilating is getting the groundwork, the behind the scenes work done. The unit is large and custom built, so that's going to take the most time. Sure. But they've already started that process. They've assigned a foreman, and they're kind of going through their behind the scenes deal before we get started. But the ball is still rolling.
Thank you, sir. From the Friendly Public Services Department, Alan Haynes.
Thank you, Mayor. Working on wrapping up the streets program. All the asphalt work is complete. Restoration's in progress. Chip seal is remaining, and as I had mentioned at the last council meeting, we do have enough savings to chip seal the portion of Mill Street between Columbia Road and Broad Street, and plan to move forward with that. Chip sealing should be happening here within the next couple of weeks. We just completed 2 culvert replacement projects, a 60-inch culvert on Cable Road and a 48-inch culvert on Graham Road. Both of those were completed successfully and under budget. And then we're going to be doing another culvert replacement. This will be a 24-inch we'll do in-house on Clark State Road. Should be happening in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Plan to close Clark State Road for that, and of course we'll put out public notice on Facebook and by the message boards. Happy to answer any questions.
That little chunk we own, huh? On Clark State.
Little chunk we own, yes, sir.
Very good. And I'm liking the concrete when they repave over the culverts. I'm liking the concrete.
good to hear on the whole. I think that works better and doesn't settle near as much as the asphalt does.
Yep. And thank you for the Havens Corners little chunk there that looks so much better, and that'll save that road from crumbling away.
Yep, and I'll have to thank Shelley Company. They really worked with us on getting that complete.
Good. Yep, they squeezed it in on a bad day. Yes, ma'am.
Two things. The first, how long will Clark State be closed?
Probably the better part of a week.
Okay. Yeah, we definitely need to put notice, because a little chunk is way traveled. I mean, that's a heavily traveled area.
It's a big cut
We use
through.
that as a
Yep.
cut through often. And I know you addressed this at the last council meeting, so my apologies for not being here, but I know that the what we were hoping to get from the state for the intersection of Broad and Summit wasn't what we were looking for. So what is the plan now? I mean, what are some ideas we have to get that intersection done with what they'll give us?
So what they came back, their response was that, what if we do this as a phased approach, which would be to not do all the additional paving, but do install a new signal with the protected phases on the east and westbound for Broad Street. We said that obviously we're gonna take what they'll give us, and we were originally going to pay for the right-of-way, but we came back to them and said, well, hey, can we get the right-of-way in there as well, and then make sure that we set the new mast arms where they will need to be for the future pavement expansion, and then work either for other funding options through the state or OPWC or in-house, or see if their phased approach doesn't get what they're expecting, if they'd be willing to kick in for the pavement to complete the project.
Okay. And we haven't heard back from them on it?
We're waiting on a response on the right-of-way acquisition portion.
Okay. What does that, in a couple different scenarios, like what does that do to our timeline?
So the timeline for the reduced project, it would speed up the timeline most likely, but for the full project, it would slow it down.
Because I mean, the protected turns are fantastic. I mean, definitely needed, but that traffic that backs up heading south is it's substantial.
Yeah, and part of the response, I can't say this is an official response from ODOT, but what we've gleaned from their response is they really look at the safety portion, and that didn't quite have the accidents that they're looking for as part of the safety funding scenario.
I'm sorry, we need some more school buses to get there, is that? Who do I call there? Who should we talk to? Okay.
Yeah, that should have been enough there, just one time with a school bus to push that over.
And that's, and it's happened more than once at that intersection with school buses, so that's, and certainly not on our department, because you guys, I mean, you've been very proactive and we've done a great job of looking at that. It is frustrating that that's not seen, especially when, you know, the, development wants to come, residential development wants to come, but yet we can't seem to get our infrastructure in place to support what we already have, so certainly frustrating. So when do you want to set the next street committee meeting?
Thank you for asking. Next council meeting night would be great.
Okay. Kathy, do we already have something on that evening? Is that August what?
17th.
17th.
No, we don't. Not yet.
What time do you think?
5:30?
5:30. Does that work for you guys?
Sounds good to me.
Yes, 5:30? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about that more. Maybe we can come up with some timelines and some different scenarios for that. That's it. Thank you.
Anything else for Alan? Yes, sir.
This is a question for Alan and Scott together. So we've had some issues with a parking lot on Oak Meadow. I think it's the Oak Meadow Apartments. I know Mr. Everson talked to me about this. He's got fielded some complaints or issues. Is there anything that we can do as far as trying to get that? I know that parking lot is on private property, but is there anything we can do to try to get that fixed? Probably more directed at Scott than Alan. I know Alan and I took a look at it. I went out and took a look at it. It's horrible, the entrance.
Mr. Blake stopped by last week. In our parking regulations, it says that Parking lots, driveways, et cetera, need to be clear from potholes, places that can gather water. So clearly, based upon his investigation and the pictures you provided, it's clearly in violation of that. So Mr. Blake stopped by last week and went to the leasing office. No one was there but left a door hanger. So 7 days he'll follow up and proceed through the process until that's resolved.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it, guys, thank you.
Awesome.
Mr. Everson, you have anything additional on that?
Not on that, no.
Okay,
With Clark State Road, is that between like Dixon and Morse?
correct.
I know I'm gonna be asked, so.
Well, FYI, Clark State and at Reynoldsburg and Albany in Franklin County is gonna be closed for weeks.
Yeah.
Because they're putting a roundabout in, and I think it's already started.
Yes.
Because on my way to work, I see the signs at Havens Corners and Reynoldsburg and Albany. So just FYI.
That's called months, Todd?
Well, I think it's just weeks, but I can't, I'm going too fast to read the sign, so I'm assuming it'll take a while. But that project started, I think, today because the detour and road close signs were up. So just FYI, I don't know how much of an impact that has, but just be aware.
Might actually be beneficial for us.
It could be,
less
I don't
people
know,
using it.
what do I know? So I don't work that way, just FYI. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, looks like Flanagan's will have a drive-through window. Anything else for Alan? Yes.
Alan, I just wanted to say Mill Street looks amazing. I don't think I've ever seen it look that good, so thank you for completing that.
Good to hear, appreciate that.
And that will get a complete coat of chip seal.
That will get a single chip seal on it, yes.
So be ready for the
Start trying
complaint,
that way again.
because people will say, hey, you had it looking perfect and smooth as a baby's rear end, and now you put chip seal in it.
Yep.
But here's why we do that. So just so you know.
And the light is because it seals up a little better, it makes it
Yep.
last a little bit longer.
Been down that road.
Mayor. Okay.
Yes.
Al, just one quick thing, on the Duraseal that you guys are doing, on Columbia, they're leaving a lot of free gravel. I've noticed just the motorcycles going through there, you know, really cautiously, and they should be. Is there any way to come back and either blow that off, or, you know, if they put it on a little heavy, just sweep it off, do something? Just a suggestion. I mean, we got complaints about grass clippings. This is a lot worse than that.
Fair enough, I think for the heads up on that. We do have a sweeper, so we'll probably wait till probably the next day to let that seal
Let it
up
set,
for a
and
day or
then
so, and then come back.
Brush
and
it
sweep
off lightly? Yeah.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Yeah, I had the same call on Creek, but I think Creek was when we had that terrible storm. Whatever berm you want to put down got washed into the road, so I know you guys took care of that, so thank you. Anything else for Alan? All right, very good. Thank you, sir. Scott?
Thank you, Mayor. The Meyer Shank Land Manufacturing District application will be heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission this Wednesday. The variance application for Meyer Shank Racing will be heard on August 11th at the Board of Zoning Appeals. Also, I just got word today that the school district will be hearing their CRA application on August 10th. So if approved at their meeting, it would come to council on August 17th for consideration. Also, 14587 Graham Road, that's been on here for quite a while, since last October. I just found out from Mr. Blake today that a new owner has bought the property. They closed last Thursday. It's our understanding his intent is to demolish the house and essentially start over. So Steve will be contacting the new owner and showing up with a demolition application to help them out with that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we will have this one resolved. Aside from that, happy to answer any questions.
His intent, there couldn't be anything else done with that house.
That was everybody's, even those previous property owners, everybody was of the same mindset that it needed to come down.
Mr. Hickens?
Scott, can you tell us a little bit about the action that's going on with
Yes, thank you. So, Pataskala Square, they were originally the door hanger courtesy letter we started in April. With COVID going on, they were having some issues with their environmental inspector, for lack of a better word, getting back with them, getting everything identified that need to happen in order to demolish Pataskala Square. So we gave them until July 7th, so essentially they expected the report back, give them a week to think about how they want to proceed, get planning and zoning department an abatement plan. June 7th came and went. They did not have everything squared away, so they were still had some things in the air, needed to talk to Mr. Washington, some other issues, so I said, tell you what, we'll give you to August 1st, which was this past Saturday, to get everything squared away and then get us an abatement plan to move forward. That came and went, and we have no abatement plan. So the next step in the process, I checked today, will be a court summons. We will have that signed and issued this Thursday because, you know, we've started in April, we're at August 1st. COVID aside, I don't think it should take that long to have a general path forward in order to figure out how this is going to be resolved. So we will have that issued, signed and issued this coming Thursday.
Thank you.
And according to Mr. Washington, they've reached out to him as, I don't know what kind of a, I wouldn't want to call it a desperation call, but they are supposed to be meeting, so I don't know what's going to happen there, but.
The property owner mentioned that they had met last week, but I guess from the planning and zoning department standpoint, you've had since April to have those conversations.
Exactly.
It shouldn't really take this long.
We've been trying for 8 years. So.
Mhm.
Anything for Alan? It's for Scott? Yes, sir.
Scott, I've got a quick question on our sign code. This has to do with electronic signs, the kind that are able to be, you know, you can program things in that are permanent. Are those permitted in Pataskala through zoning regulations, or do they have to go through any kind of special permit?
They are permitted by zoning by right if they meet certain requirements.
And that just be size and color, or what?
Size, color, the frequency that the notice changes from one to the other. You can't have flashing or spinning or anything like that. So those are some basic parameters they have on those. If they can't meet that, then there's a variance process.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Scott. Mr. Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for having me back. Sorry for being gone for 2 weeks, but I took a much-needed vacation. Went out west and saw some beautiful parks and brought back a lot of motivation into how we can help enhance our parks. But in the meantime, I would like to give an update on several things, so sorry if I have you for roughly 5 or 10 minutes. So the first item to give an update on will be our pool. While I was gone, there was discussion regarding pool leak, and we also worked with the utilities department to get various readings throughout that week. From all of the conversations we've had with utilities director, Mr. Hicken, after the much needed temporary fixes from PRA, we're looking at roughly 8,000 gallons lost a day, a lot less than what we were seeing in the 20s. So at this time, that's the rounded number that we're working with. I want to give some financial updates up to this point since we're considered halfway through. As of now, total revenue that we brought in is nearly $9,200. That's stemming from when we opened registration on June 26th until July 31st. Payroll and salary, we have expended roughly $10,200. And other expenses, about $14,500 in other expenses. So those expenses do not include our water bill. At this time, after these sewer adjustments, we are looking at roughly a $4,000 water bill. At this time, we're hoping to keep that or at least reduce that water bill as we continue to move forward. But those are the financial updates that I have halfway. Of course, 2 weeks from now, we are scheduled to, end our pool season. I'm hoping that we can continue to move forward with our pool season, but at the August 17th meeting, I plan to have a full financial documentations or an update for you all as to how the full season treated us. So you have those numbers and also can make a decision whether we're able to move forward through the fall with the good weather, pending we do not know what's going to happen with school districts, etc. So I did want to provide you with those updates. I want to give some, general numbers for registrations for the month. We did a total tally of early session, late session, and lap swim. So at this time, we have seen roughly 1,299 total registrations. So that stems from people registering
nearly every day, and also pre-registering for August dates. So we did have quite a few people who registered $90, $200 here and there, just for, but those are pretty good numbers. So we have roughly 1,299 total registrations for the pool season. So I think that's pretty good. It was a successful first month. I know we didn't bring in as much revenue as we planned, but in the meantime, when it comes down to our early and late sessions and not reaching full capacity, I see it as a win-win because we are currently in Ray County. So if we are trying to pack our houses, we're really not doing ourselves a service by complying with the social distancing parameters. And a lot of the, I guess, patrons who have been visiting have preached how good it is to see, hey, we have some space, we're not packed in here like sardines, we're actually able to swim and things like that. So I did want to give some insight as to some of my thought process as to the good and bad of not reaching our 75 capacity per session. To move forward, I want to give an update on some exciting, I guess, recreation program excitement. We did get word back last week that we are able to have our fall soccer season. It will not be a normal soccer season. Due to the governor's orders, we are not allowed to have scrimmages nor games. With that being said, soccer is a socially distant sport in itself. It is a contact sport, but when you are training, we haven't had anything all spring. So we're running our fall season as skills training only, offered throughout the week with makeup days on Saturday. So I'm hoping that community are on board with this plan, and if they are not on board with that plan, we will provide a refund for them. And we don't anticipate rolling those fees over to the spring season. We want to end up closing out and figuring out where we'll be for next year. But I feel like it's a good service to offer with what we're dealing with at this time. So some soccer is better than no soccer, and skills are important as well. The fishing program, would like to enlighten everyone that we did get a $500 ODNR grant for the Step Outside grant to offer this service. This was supposed to start in April. The program is essentially fishing education. We'll offer that starting September 12th, and it'll be ran for 6 total Saturdays. We're going to open it up to the community. I'll most likely give it to all of those who registered last year at our fishing event, our outdoor day first, see how many will register from there. We're going to limit the capacity because we want it to be a good hands-on experience. And the grant and dollars are going to help cover the cost for some bait, maybe some tackle, and also some small refreshments for those weeks. Those are our socially distanced sports as we move forward. Another item that was discussed while I was gone was the Foundation Park, I guess, resolution contract or resolution, which is currently tabled. We want to keep that tabled, and as you see in front of you now, resolution, resolution number 051, authorizing the administrator to advertise and receive and review bids for the construction of that. Did just as you wanted us to move forward with the process. Once we're able to get all of the documentation and proposals over to Hall, we'll start that process in hopes to having some bid numbers to you in the fall. So it'll be a few months process, but we'll have those numbers to you. That way we can have this discussion all over again. Then 2 other things. The Vacation Bible School that was scheduled with Jersey Baptist Church was canceled. But in the meantime, I guess it was their sports and arts camp that was canceled. After canceling, Penny Zuber reached out to me to see if, hey, are we able to pass out our Vacation Bible School packets to the community. So they anticipate using Foundation Park parking lot August 9th for a couple hours just to drop off packets, just to bring packets and also snacks to hand out to the community with activities inside. So that is open to the community. Jersey Baptist Church they have been great to work with, so we want to make sure that we're giving back in some way, shape, or form. Lastly, just to throw this out there, this Thursday I have a meeting with both school districts, Southwest Licking and Licking High School districts, to discuss how we are able to partner and collaborate to offer programming. And I'm hoping to present some of this information in detail to the Parks Advisory Board tomorrow, just to fine tune, hey, what would you like for me to bring up as to how we can work together to
see that our programs are flourishing since we have limited staff, et cetera. So how do we get our youth involved to help see some programs prevail? So aside from that, I'm open to any questions.
Yes, ma'am.
How's the Liberty Park project coming along?
Currently, the Liberty Park project is at a standstill until Decker is able to put us into their asphalt schedule. So we're at the mercy of the contractor at this time. I did request that the contractor give us at least a 48 to 72 hour notice prior to Decker arriving. That way we can have our inspectors out there. And I've been working with Alan and Scott and Jim Hay.
So the asphalt's for the path.
Yes.
What about the other items, like the stuff that's in the woods and stuff? I mean, that can't continue on without that being done?
It can continue. Current, those things have to be ordered.
I see.
So there's a waiting process. So right now it's slated that, if I can remember correctly, September 8th, we're supposed to have the shelter prefab materials in, and then once that material's in, they begin the construction. When we met in early July, there was an 8-week lead time with the playground equipment that's going to be installed in the woods there. So once that equipment is installed, the contractor Builderscape will begin to install that equipment inside the area.
Have you had any feedback from residents in that area, Lena, about construction or anything going on?
I haven't had any feedback at all. You know, I gave, we put out some flyers 2 to 3 weeks ahead of time. I put them on some, I guess, mailboxes / cars here and there. Sorry. Personally walked to some residents as well. I also put some things on their HOA website, giving them the, I guess, updates. We've been updating them since 2019 as to this is going to be moving forward. So no complaints at this time.
Haven't heard anything for at least 2 weeks, right?
Nope, not right now.
I haven't heard anything on it.
Well, and I'll just tell you that I continue, and I know this is like, I continue to beat the drum, but tons of compliments and appreciation for the trail along Taylor. People out there literally all the time. So, I mean, it's gotten to the point where I have to, you know, at my own subdivision, I have to stop because there's constantly people crossing the street. So, like, you really have to watch for the
Looks like we got the railing at the right height.
Yes,
too.
and the railing is fantastic. I've had no complaints from my household about the height of the railing, so that's appreciated too, so. That's it.
Anything else for Lanier? Yes.
Lanier, I've seen, some kids running over at, Freedom Park. Is that like the high school maybe track team or?
Cross country.
It's cross country, okay. I've seen them up there.
Yeah, there's a country group out there, and we also have a local soccer club who's using it 3 times a week. So it's getting some use. It's always has use.
The cross country team does phases each day of different groups, and I mean, they're out there all the time, and I really appreciate it, cause I don't have to drive him anywhere. He can just get on the trail and go by himself, so.
We did have, I'd heard something, and I saw it on our PPD page about some folks after dark, 4-wheelers and stuff on, I call it your path.
Yeah, my 9-year-old thinks I should be compensated, by the way, so you can
So,
get ahead about that.
we busted anybody, or?
They're,
We have not, but we got the word out to the officers to keep an eye on that.
Okay.
They've been in mulch manufacturing numerous times, but by the time we get somebody over there, they're gone.
they tend to really, along the corner of Cleveland and Taylor, in that little turn area where there's a little grassy area, so they must live back in maybe the Way Road or somewhere. They're back in that. I've seen them a handful, and then they like to get back in Citizens Park too. So.
Anything else for Lanier? Yes, sir.
Lanier, is the pool shuts down in what, 11 days-ish?
Well, our last day is scheduled for Sunday, August 16th.
I know we had a discussion as council last time about the leak and wanted to see if the improvements of the leak, if it's worth continuing with the season or not. Did we want to kind of cap off that discussion tonight? Just curious where everybody felt on it.
You know, I think if the weather stays nice and the schools don't open, and, you gave the numbers have dropped on us losing water, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so again, we don't have much going on for the city. I guess I would see, I'd love to see us, if the weather stays, it's supposed to go back to the 90s next week, so that's just my input.
If I might, Mayor, one of the things that I would say is, in line with what Mr. Epperson said, is I think Lanier and I, when we come back on the 17th, will give you a much better idea of where we are, not only in the overall, but where we've been in those days. I think Lanier and I are open to creative things, possibly maybe like weekends. Weekends tend to be very big, and I think we all know why. Maybe there's a creative avenue there, but also I want, throughout this process, I think Lanier and I and Jamie have all worked together to make sure that council knows exactly what the bottom line is with the project. The fact that the leak, we see significant lower leak, certainly bodes well in my mind. But I also want to make sure that everybody knows exactly where we stand on the appointed date, so.
Well, yeah, I'm glad we stayed open, and I'm glad we got the leak, at least a temporary, I'm calling it a fix, but if there's an abatement of how much water we're losing. Yeah, I mean, who knows if schools are gonna open, or if they're gonna open, if it's just gonna be, distance learning only, or virtual learning, who knows? So I think we should keep an open mind on that. We may be able to open on weekends, as long as the weather stays good. We're at the mercy of the weather. I mean, you know, even in a normal, non-pandemic summer, we can have days like today, where it's, I think, 70, I think was the high, where we can, you know, so we'll see. But I'm glad we stayed open, and Mr. Everson brings up a good point. I think we should come back, and I'd like to hear some suggestions, especially if we find out that schools are not gonna be open in the traditional sense. There may be an opportunity for us to have something on the weekends for kids to get out of the house and do something with their families.
And I know I reached out when we first started talking about this to, actually, the gentleman approached me and said, I know we're not having fireworks this year, how else can I help out the city? And I asked him to help us with the pool, so I got a check, which obviously you'll be handing to Mr. Nicholson, but there's a check for $3,000.
Thank you.
And,
Does that person wish to remain anonymous, or?
well, that person, I'll make sure that Mr. Nicholson and you get his name and address so that we can send him a nice letter and say, hey, thanks for
Good.
helping us out. We usually do through the Lions Club, because he gives us that money for the fireworks, and we send him a letter. But this time, as I told him, this was for helping out the city, keep the pool open for the kids, which he's got like 6 kids and 50 grandkids, so he's all about kids, and he wanted to keep the pool open. So I will get you that name and address.
While we're on that topic, I would also like to point out that PRA was instrumental in the fixing of that leak, and that type of stuff happens, and sometimes there's no magic envelope that goes this way. But as an administrator, I'd like to offer my thanks to them for the work that they put in.
Well, that's a huge relief that the Band-Aid helped. Do you have any input on that, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, we got, I think there was a good portion of it. There's still more. You can't find every small crack and so forth. But I think there's also some other things that, you know, while Lanier was on vacation, I was down there quite a bit. I think there may be some ways to bring down some of our costs, the city's costs, through some now, maybe just some different ways of managing some of the water, that kind of stuff. So I'm more than happy, Lanier, to talk with you and Tim about, you know, some thoughts on that. Maybe even some personnel thoughts, personnel ideas too. So more than happy to help in any way.
One thing that we have been discussing, I've met with, since one of my managers got back today as well, we had a long couple-hour discussion as we think about moving forward. We had a nice discussion as to, hey, so let's figure out who's going back to college, who's not going back to college, who's willing to work past our August 17th if approved by council, and what will those
schedules look like. So we are taking a look at how to reduce costs from a salary standpoint as we move forward to help with that bottom line. So we are thinking and trying to think of all avenues moving forward.
We welcome that opportunity.
I'm glad to have that discussion, so it's again, I'm obviously a huge advocate of it, so whatever we can do for the kids, and quite frankly, not just the kids, the parents.
Yes.
You wouldn't believe how many parents are down there with their kids having a great time. So I'm an advocate for the parents also.
At this point, getting out of the house, huh? Yes.
Yeah, just getting them out of the house is probably a huge benefit.
Back to Mr. Fulton. The spokesperson for the pothole says, thank you. That enforcement process has begun.
Very well.
Okay, thank you.
Good. All right, Chief Brooks.
I have nothing else, so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Chief, I heard you had not a fake, but an accidental 911 call in the last few days. Is that right?
I'm not aware of that one.
Okay, you did, and it sounds like from everything I saw on social media, it was handled really well by the officer. Maybe Deputy Chief Bowles knows about it, I don't know. But
Officer Gavin took care of it.
Was I think a little girl did it by accident, and everything, it looked like everybody was really, really happy. It might have happened over the weekend, I think.
Yes, it did.
But everyone was really happy, and so nice shout out to the department on handling that well. And luckily, that's a 911 call that was ended with a smile and not something else. So thanks, guys.
Pass that on, thank you.
Anything else for Chief? Yes.
Chief, I had a few questions lately about car break-ins and things still not being stolen, but could you explain why it's so important to file a report even if nothing's been stolen?
Yeah, because we do a lot of crime mapping with that information. So, we can dedicate resources to a certain neighborhood if it's a recurring problem. I mean, we kind of take it out days and weeks. So a lot of times we'll find out that, it's always on a Wednesday or something like that, and we can actually, again, dedicate resources to get in there and try and catch these people.
Perfect. Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, it's very important. Even if, somebody just rifles through your stuff,
Right.
it's an annoyance, but we'd really appreciate a call for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
And also, I know the chief appreciates this. If people are out on Facebook, if you have home security camera, the doorbell camera, things like that, you may not know who is on that camera, but a policeman in your neighborhood might. And so that information is shared. Law enforcement has a sharing matrix.
We do.
And maybe our police department doesn't know who it is, but maybe the sheriff department recognizes somebody, or an officer in another jurisdiction recognizes it, and will say, hey, this is who you want to talk to. So even though they didn't steal anything, didn't have any damage, it's important to get that information because it may help prevent a future break-in and get the officers in contact with whoever's doing stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Scott, now that I know we have some teeth and that kind of stuff, a couple months back, there were a lot of folks complaining about the parking lot and the entrance to the trailer court. So maybe you can steer Steve to that location. And
He's been involved in that one as well.
very good.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, committee chair reports. Go ahead, sir.
I've got one. Utility Committee had a meeting this evening. We had two issues that we resolved. We reviewed, I should say. The first was per the ordinance that is on tonight regarding, the resolution that's on tonight for the well cleaning. We talked about the three different proposals that were received by the utility department. Went through and last utility meeting, we had some questions regarding a couple of the proposals. Went through, got verification and clarification on what seems to be the best of the three, which is mount drilling will be, a motion was passed by the utility committee for council in support of that cleaning project. The second item was information regarding well number 8 at Water Treatment Plant 1 is producing about 50% of the water that it typically produces. We don't know exactly what the reason is on that. The utility department is proposing to have Mount come over while they're mobilized here for the other well cleaning project to come over, pull the pump, find out what's going on with that well. That's one of the bigger, that's one of the two big wells over at Water Plant 1. So the committee was in favor. There wasn't a motion per se, but it was in favor of having them investigate that while they're here, doing the work. Hopefully we can find out what it is and work within the budget that's already presented to absorb that cost. And any questions? Okay.
Any other committee chair reports? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to have a safety and technology committee meeting. Mr. Barso and Mrs. Carter, if you are available September 21st before the council meeting then? Good for you? Mr. Lincoln, you're available for that?
I'm gonna just say, yes, I don't have my little book with me, so.
I'm
yes.
fine. If it's before city council, then I'm fine, yeah.
And so 5:30, and then Kathy, I will get you what you need from me when I figure out what that is.
So 5:30, June?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So Labor Day bumps our meeting to Tuesday the 8th and then Monday the 21st in August.
September.
I'm sorry, September, sorry. Yep, thank you. Anything else? All right, here we go, unfinished business. The first two remain, the ordinance and the resolution remain tabled. So on the new business, ordinance 2020-4371 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2020-4371, this is the first reading, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency.
Discussion?
Yes, sir. Oh,
Mayor, I do have a
Mr. Walter?
question for Jamie. Jamie, just a quick question on this. I know that the ordinance talks about essentially just under $61,000 is available, 60,810 to be exact. And the ordinance is asking for 65. Is there any reason for the additional fees, the additional funds, not fees, funds to be asked for?
No, this all will total $60,800. The problem is I don't know exactly, while we're going through this process, how much of it will end up being reimbursement versus direct payment. So it just gives us the flexibility. The total spent will be equal to the proceeds in the fund.
Okay.
Did that answer your question?
And why would, so you're saying between two different funds, you're putting a buffer between the two different funds so that because you don't know the exact number between your general government and your other fund. Is that the reason?
It's all in what's now known as the 224 fund. It's the local coronavirus relief fund. So that's the only proceeds that are going to go into that fund. The problem is there may still, if I do exactly how much I have as of today, I might find that there's an extra couple $1,000s that we could have reimbursed. So I bumped both pieces up just so that there was a little bit of wiggle room to make sure I could reimburse the funds if I find it. If not, we'll spend it directly. But it's only going to be the $60,800.
We're capped at that, right?
Yeah, that's all the revenue that's coming into that fund.
Did that answer your question? Now's the time, Andy.
Yeah, I guess I'm still stuck on this. I know it's only a couple $1,000s and it's not that big a deal, but you're asking for 65 to be allocated to this, and you're only able to spend 60,810, and I'm still a little bit. That's why I was asking. Are you looking for a buffer between two funds? But it sounds like it's only one fund.
No. So let's say today, right, we have 38.5 that I can document. If I do it exactly 38.5 and that's the only transfers, and we find an extra $2,000 that we paid out that I could have reimbursed because I did 38.5 exactly, I can't reimburse those funds now.
I fully understand that. But when you get to $60,809, you only have one more dollar that you can even spend because that's our cap within that fund, is that correct?
Correct. I can only spend what I have resources to spend in that fund, and the only proceeds that are gonna go into that fund will be the grant proceeds of $60,800.
Okay, so maybe this will help me. So the additional funds that you're asking for within this ordinance, what are they for?
Think of it in terms, I mean, if I budgeted exactly $38,500 in transfers, and then the 22,013 as, you know, that adds up to the $60,800. If we find more reimbursements, it's in the wrong budgetary line, and I would have to come back to you to do a supplemental to move it from general operating down to reimbursements into the transfers and advances. I'm bulking both up slightly just so that regardless of that little nits at the end where it comes, I have enough appropriation. In no case will there be more than $60,800 spent out of the fund.
Okay, well, I think I got it.
He
Thank you,
got,
that
he
that
got the
helps.
aha moment there. Very good. All right. Anything else on this?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Let's just other discussion. I move that we dispense with 3 readings of ordinance 2020-437 pursuant to section 4.04 of the Task Charter.
You got a motion to declare an emergency.
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll on the motion to declare an emergency.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter.
Yes.
Motion passes. Need a motion to adopt.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I
sir.
move that we adopt ordinance 2020-437.
Got a motion by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson.
Yes.
Ordinance passes. On to resolutions. Resolution 2020-045, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with Mount Water Well Drilling, LLC, for well cleaning and inspection services at Water Plant 2.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Walther,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Epperson. Discussion and roll.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow.
Yes.
Resolution passes. On to resolution 2020-051, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to advertise, receive, and review bids for construction of walking trail improvements at Foundation Park.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Walther,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Epperson. Discussion and roll.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Resolution passes. On to motions. Motion to authorize the release of $60,000 from the fire escrow fund to Aaron and Sarah O'Rourke, who reside at 5144 Headley's Mill Road.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Discussion and roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Epperson,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hampshire,
Yes.
Gaelic,
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Scott's gonna check the hallway to see if there's anybody who wishes to have any additional citizen comments. That was a good meeting, and gee, you lucked out there, Jamie. The old BMW stayed high and dry tonight.
Yeah, well, I had to take my wife to the doctor, so I was still out.
Oh, okay, well, we're glad she's okay.
She's fine.
No one's out there.
And nobody for additional citizens' comments, so we'll go around the room and start with Mr. Epperson.
I have nothing.
Nothing tonight? Mrs. Carter?
I have a couple things. The first thing is, I would just want to say that, you know, we had Licking Heights finally had their graduation on July 25th. So graduation purgatory has ended for me, but it was phenomenal and exhausting and unbelievably difficult to coordinate, but it went off very well. So we were able to actually have, you know, it was 12 students at a time, but kind of like literally a mini ceremony every 20 minutes to include 12 students. Their families were able to come in. We had groups of chairs distance, you know, per family, And so, it was pretty bittersweet to, I didn't realize that the first time since March and the last time I'd be seeing those kids was standing there that day getting their diplomas, but it was phenomenal, and it went off really well. So, that was fantastic, and, I've been lucky enough to be able to be housed in our new high school for the past couple of weeks, and, cause I don't leave one stressful situation very long before I just jump right into the next one. But I can't wait, for some type of tour or something for you guys to get to see this building, cause it is absolutely phenomenal, and it's almost criminal that we're not gonna be able to have kids in that school, because, you guys have all been around me enough to know that I'm not like the giggly type, but I haven't walked through there one time and not been like, I mean, like literally, it is outstanding, so I'm really excited.
When can we expect a tour then?
I don't
Can you
know,
work
we'll
on
have
that?
to, that will be up to our superintendent, but we haven't gotten our full occupancy permit yet. There's still some things going on, and with any sort of luck this school year, we will have halls with students in them, and we'll be able to I know that I have a high schooler in my house who's highly offended that he hasn't had a sneak peek, but my God, if I did that and he opened his mouth to one person. So no.
Okay.
Nobody, but yes, I will definitely put that in here, cause I'm really excited about it, so. That's all I have.
Well, we talked about it too, Robertson did that, so Robertson did our PD, and I can't wait to see the school. So.
And they're a lot of fun to be around too. One, they're really good, and two, they're very patient with the secretary walking around pointing out all the things that here and there. So do this, move that, but they are fantastic, and I guess they said, Johnstown Elementary took them 17 months. And it was maybe not even half. This is like 275,000 square foot, and it was done in 15 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a quality, they've done a really great job. So I'm excited for you guys to be able to see it, so.
Just for the record, I think Mrs. Carter likes the new school. Mr. Gaelick.
I just want to say I'm happy we found a temporary solution for the leak at the pool. I know it's a very important piece of our community, especially right now, and there's nothing else really going on, kind of close, so I'm glad we could find that for now. That's it.
Good. Mr. Barstow?
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Zatz?
Nothing, Mayor.
Mr. Wolf?
Nothing, sir.
And Mrs. Hampshire?
A couple things. I had told you guys marching band was kicking off after the night after our last meeting, and it got delayed. So it is now supposed to kick off tomorrow. Very staggered. But my senior, my last one on trombone, is excited to see what's going on. So also, Lanier, I look forward to, once things start letting up, get working on that tree planting between those 3 local Lions clubs again, so we can get our names out there and get doing some stuff together and show you the front there with the Lions, so.
Into it.
Mr. Lee?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Lee and seconded by Mr. Walter to adjourn. Kathy, roll please.
Carter?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes?
Jefferson?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hampshire?
Yes.
Gaelic?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Good night, Jamie.
Good night, Jamie.
Bye, Jamie.
I'll let you know if the road is actually closed, because that's the way I got directly.
I know that they've done that line just periodically all the
Yeah,
time.
they started the tree clearing, like a month and a half ago.
Yes.
Sure.